I've known Donna for, I think, probably
Since you've been here,
7
yeah.
or 8 years since I've been here.
Mhm.
I first met Donna when she was an art teacher at a middle school in St. Vrain County in Longmont, and has since then, I mean, our paths have crossed so many times it's kind of hard to count, but now she's the Visual Arts Content Specialist at Colorado Department of Education, and she is a professor of art education at UNC, and she has, she's done a lot of things all around.
I'm just a busybody.
Busy, in the best sense of the word. She's also really, truly an expert on a lot of things, and arts integration is just one of them. So hopefully we'll be able to tap into a lot of her knowledge this morning.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you. If you could join me in welcoming Donna.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being here and braving the drive into downtown Denver and finding a place to park. So you're really dedicated, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. So this is what is arts integration. But first, I want to know who we have in the room and who you are. So let's kind of go around and then say your name, what you do, and why you are here. What are you hoping to get out of today? So I can kind of make that happen for you.
My name is Seth. I'm best known as a performance poet. I'm a writer and an actor and a musician. And I'm here because I also work with kids in an after-school program, and they want us to engage them in all kinds of education activities, science, math, et cetera. And I'd like to figure out how to get the arts as part of that, because when you do something creative with them, they're more engaged.
Yeah, I agree. So good morning, I'm Andrea McKeeser. I'm a writer and a translator. I just joined the 360 roster as a teaching artist, and I'm interested in doing workshops that engage kids with world languages and creative writing, or world languages and science and math, or creative writing and what have you. So I'm here because I just joined the roster. I just did my orientation a few months ago, and I'm curious about who else is in this crowd, and also learning more about arts integration and the approach taken.
Bob Campana, Baldwin, Colorado. I'm part of Artworks Loveland. I teach as an independent photographer workshop. Gone my entire adult life without a real job doing these type of things. And why I'm here is because what I believe you're presenting is what I keep doing. I want to know. Plus, I want to meet new people. You know, this is always a
What better people to meet?
So, yeah.
Let's go around that table. Hi, I'm Hallie. I work for the Colorado Dream Foundation, a nonprofit. I provide all kinds of services for local communities and schools. And I'm assistant program director at our first whole school elementary school. So I work with kindergarten through third graders. We provide food services and legal services for families and English classes, GED classes, all kinds of those things. And we run an after school program. Excuse me. For the kiddos, first and through third grade. So I've always really been interested in arts integration, and I just need to start getting my foot in the door and getting involved, because I hope to be high up in the field eventually and working with this with my everyday life, and then working my way through the process. And I'm just really young, so I'm trying to start at the beginning and work my way up. So I'm really excited to be here, meet you all, and start getting involved. Perfect.
I'm Dan Easter. I'm a theater artist and an educator. On the artist roster, so part of my here is to fulfill the professional development, and before the year slips away, which is quickly. Arts integration is something I've been doing for a lot of years, and I'm always looking for new ideas and to confirm it and to find kindred souls.
Elizabeth.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
So, I'm Elizabeth Bustler. I am from a contingency of 5 of us that are here from Eagle View Middle School down in Colorado Springs. And we started our Academic Arts Academy 8 years ago, and it's a program, kind of a school within a school, that focuses on integrating arts through the education, or into our education. And last year we were the Think 360 Arts Middle School for the state of the year. And so one big step in doing that is making sure that arts is not just focused for our Arts Academy, but that all of our teachers are integrating. So I am the one rep who's not actually in the Arts Academy, who's here today to kind of be spreading it out and disseminating it through to the rest of the school and continue moving arts integration throughout our building school-wide.
Okay. And I will be with you all again on October 7th.
Yay! So awesome! So we'll be seeing you very soon.
Yes.
You guys are coming down.
I'm Anna Faria. I'm also from Eagleview. I teach 8th grade language arts in their academic arts academy, and Liz and I have kind of pioneered or Elizabeth, in the last year. Sorry, in the last year, we've been focusing on teaching, especially our advanced classes, with literature through American movements, and so we do a lot of arts integration with Romanticism, Victorianism. Naturalism and modernism and those pieces. So like I do a lot of arts integration already, but I haven't ever had like a formal, here's arts integration. And so I'm curious as to what like a formal stance is. And I want to take cool things back to my kids. So awesome.
I'm Katie Flanagan. I'm part of the Eagleview contingency. I was newly hired this year. I'm a science teacher, so very excited to learn how to integrate more arts into my science class.
I'm Carissa Reading. I'm also from Eagleview Middle School. I teach 6th grade social studies, and every strategy I've learned so far I've been able to use, so I'm just eager to get more.
Hi, I'm Susan Miller-Curley. I'm the Dean of Instruction at Mill Community Arts School in Northeast Denver, and I know you all have done some work with our school. I'm the new Dean of Instruction, and we're looking to start arts integration. We have a promise to the community I feel we haven't kept that we need to get started on, so that's why I'm here.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Monica Selly, and I'm from Eagleview Middle School, and I teach science to 7th graders, and this is my first year of teaching, so I am looking forward to learning some new things about how we can integrate arts to our curriculum. So I'm hopeful I'll pick up some cool ideas and use them with my students.
Great.
Thank you.
Arts and science. That's my favorite thing to Fantastic. So I hope you're networking here and taking down names and talking to each other later, getting cards, because it sounds like from what I'm hearing your needs could be fulfilled in the room with what is going on here. So terrific. So let's just jump in with what is arts integration. So I'm going to use, no one has the absolute, this is it definition of arts integration. You need to make it fit for your community and what your needs are within your particular community. And every community is a little bit different. But I'm going to start with the Kennedy Center definition of what arts integration is, which Eagleview is familiar with. Okay? And the reason for this is several reasons. I also had a school that was a partner in education a couple of years ago at the Kennedy Center, and Think 360 is a national partner with the Kennedy Center. So we're going to start with that definition, and then we'll go from there. So the Kennedy Center believes that there are 3 basic ways that the arts can be in schools. So one way that we're all familiar with is arts as curriculum. So that would be, I was an art teacher, and so in my class I had a visual art curriculum that I taught. Theater teachers, you have a theater curriculum that you teach. Creative writing teachers, you get the idea. You have a curriculum that you teach within your class. So that is one way that the arts are in schools. Another way that the arts are in schools are what the Kennedy Center calls an arts-enhanced curriculum. And so the point of that is where you're really teaching something else, but you're using the arts as an avenue to get there. And then there's truly arts-integrated curriculum, which is a step above arts-enhanced. So let me show you some pictures kind of illustrating that. So here's learning in the arts. So this would be, I'm learning music in the classroom. I'm learning art in the visual arts classroom. This would be arts infused, or sometimes it's called learning through the arts in a classroom. Sometimes it's just called infused curriculum. And what this is, I'll give you some examples here. This was a theater class. This was a middle school, not theater, a social studies class, a middle school social studies class. And the professor or the teacher was teaching them about the Civil War. And the students could share their understanding of what they learned and what was most important to them in any way that they wanted to. And this particular student decided she was going to share as her final project Abraham Lincoln and all about Abraham Lincoln. And so he was very open to them expressing however they wanted to share their knowledge. It's called expressive outcomes. Elliot Eisner is big on this. And this teacher was a follower. And so this particular student decided she was going to make Abraham Lincoln's hat. And all along that, she was going to put flyers and pictures and information of Abraham Lincoln. So this is an arts enhanced lesson. It's not arts integrated, because the lesson's about social studies. It's not about hat making. Okay, see the difference a little bit? But the arts was a way to let that information get in there. Or this was a science class, and they were building a track, and the energy was going to move the cars around. But it wasn't about so much the building. It was about the science that was happening in here. So arts enhanced. It's a good thing, but not truly arts integrated. So what's the difference? Arts integrated, this is the Kennedy Center's definition, and I won't read you that whole thing. And by the way, you have access to the PowerPoint. Michelle's going to give you a Dropbox link, and it has this PowerPoint in it. So you can go back, steal the slides, do whatever you need to do with this. What arts integration truly is, it's the two content coming together and growing at the same time. So while I'm learning about social studies, I am also learning about connecting concepts, big ideas, essential thinkings, and essential questions, also in a creative form, an art. And I'm learning both at the same time, which is how we learn in the real world, right? In the real world, we don't silo things like we do in education. We learn different things at the same time as we're growing. So examples. So here's some examples of arts integrated lessons. So this was a language arts classroom where the students were learning about the parts of a story. And while they were learning about the parts of a story, they were acting out elements of theater, space and movement and time. And they were putting it together in a story. So they were learning both at the same time. Okay? This was an art and math lesson. So the teacher, the art teacher, and we'll get to how you can schedule this later, but the art teacher and the math teacher were working together to teach volume. And so the art teacher was teaching how do you create the illusion of volume, and the math teacher was teaching how do you measure volume. And the two were working together. So the students had this huge understanding of volume in multiple layers. So at your tables, talk to each other. What is your school's definition of arts integration? Or what has been your experience with arts integration? And then we're going to share out what you think about what I just said and what your experience has been. And beautiful conversations. So let's share out, what is your experience? Do you have a different understanding with your groups? Even before we do that, we have one more member has joined us. Helen, please introduce yourself.
Hi.
Just your name and why you're here, what you do.
My name is Helen Eberhardy-Dunn. I'm first and foremost, I guess, an artist and a sculptor. Hello. You're seeing familiar faces here, which is lovely. I work in Colorado Springs in a gifted charter. I helped start the school there. I didn't start the school. I was part of the startup. I'm the art teacher there. One of the important parts of the charter is integration. So we do a lot of integration there. But as I was saying to these guys, the place where integration and standards and core meet is often fraught.
And we will talk about standards and how you get that in there today too.
Yes.
Terrific. Okay, so I want you to share some of your conversations, some of the key points of your conversations and your understandings with the group. Who would like to go first? You had beautiful things. Okay, then I'm going to volunteer somebody because I loved what you said about teachers.
Okay. Well, we all had different experiences, but basically I was talking about how I found that we concentrate a lot on the students and a lot of times the teachers don't have time to replenish themselves creatively, and we were offering curriculum-based opportunities. We had money, we had artists to work with the teachers, but the teachers didn't have time to figure out how to utilize them in their lesson plan, and so we kind of switched gears and started just providing some continuing education credits for teachers on creativity, probably like something you're doing this afternoon. But so it's just remembering the holistic picture when you're doing arts integration, and it's not, teachers are as important in that picture as students, and then you guys can tell your. She was they were both very impacted.
Well, yeah, I can say I'm a product of arts integration. I grew up in Chicago. My family was blue collar. In high school, my French teacher brought in an improv actor to work with us every Tuesday, doing improv exercises and putting on shows all in French. And things just kind of exploded for me. And I actually moved to Denver 2 years ago from Paris, where I was out doing all my grad degrees.
Wow.
So it was that experience, I mean, I can pretty much trace it, that took this fascination and this, affinity for foreign languages and just exploded upon it. Just put it to distract it. So.
That is fantastic. So a real life anecdotal example of the importance of arts integration and the difference that it makes. And I'll show you some studies, but.
For certain people, it's gonna really decide the course of their future and their career and who they end up being as well.
Fantastic. What about definitions? Do any of you have a different understanding or a different definition of arts integration? Or was this new to any of you?
We use this definition in our school, but we were kind of talking about working on that fusion and how we are doing a lot of, here's some arts over here and here's some content over here, but how we can use a fusion of those in the Girl and Boys Club as well as our classrooms to help students make new connections, and also to even use dance to teach kids to think critically and resolve problems and become empowered in expressing their own ideas.
Right.
So we were really kind of focused on that fusion piece.
That's terrific. So if you think of arts integration as a continuum of being, pure content and then purely integrated, you're never going to be always over here. You can't be. But it's okay to be on the continuum. The idea being, do you know where you're at, and do the others who work with you understand what your intentions are with where you're at that point? So we'll talk about this a little bit later, but on your table there is a chart, and this is from University of Minnesota. This is what we use at the Colorado Department of Education when we integrate units. And we like to stay pink and above when we're talking about integration, but you cannot always be up here at pure integration in green. So here's a slightly different take on arts integration from the Kennedy Center, but it's the same idea of what you're after is true integration of that learning in both content area in a big concept, a big idea of thinking. And I like this chart because it talks about what does the teacher do and what should the student be doing. So it has the student and teacher's point of view there. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but it's always a continuum. You can't always be in true integration. You've got to introduce that arts content on its own. You've got to introduce that math content on its own at some point to be able to grasp it and understand it before you can play with it. And it's different for every kid. Some kids need the art to be able to get the information, and others, particularly in math, it'll slow them down. And they want to just stay where math is until then they've got a great grasp of it, and then they bring the arts in and share their understanding with it. So it's different for every kid as well. Other different understandings of integration. Yes, sir?
I was struck when we were talking, and then Bob mentioned the project that he worked on, that I think really often integration happens better when it's project-driven than when it is just, okay, we're going to do this cool thing in the classroom. He mentioned a book they produced, and there's fallout. Okay, in order to produce a book, well, we got to do some photography, we got to do some writing, we got to understand something about layout, we got to understand something about graphic design. And I think that really often when things are project-driven, for students it makes more sense. In terms of what you were just talking about, it's like, oh, okay, this is helping me to learn math.
It is.
years ago, I read a book that really impacted me on British primary schools, where they would go out and look at the bridge and say, okay, what are the different things we can do about this bridge? Well, we can do engineering, we can draw pictures of the bridge, we can write poems about the bridge. And so it had a real life anchor and hook, and I think that really often that is the way that students connect with what we're doing when we try and do arts integration.
Beautifully said. I'd love the name of that book if you can think about it too. You don't have to think about it right now. And so what Dan was describing, that's assessment. Dan just described how you assess arts integrated learning. You make something. That's it. That's assessment of arts integrated learning. Anything else you would like to share about your understanding of arts integration? Okay, so you've heard some examples of why I do arts integration. Here are a couple of studies for you, and when you get this PowerPoint, if you click on these links right here, I keep calling them hot links. My daughter keeps telling me to stop. She says, Mama, that's a sausage, quit it. But I don't know what live links, I guess. Okay, so here and here will take you to the actual study that's there. And actually, I just got 4 more new studies in my inbox this morning, and so I'll put them in your Dropbox if they look interesting. Brand new, hot off the presses. But this one talks about results showed significantly better retention and pedagogical practice of teaching through the arts, its value for cognitive, academic, and social skills, and its retention was the greatest for students at the lowest levels of achievement. So if you have students who are in an at-risk category, I work with a teacher who says her students fully embrace risk. They're not at risk, they fully embrace risk. It's really beneficial here, and we'll talk about at the very end why I think it is in arts integration, but it's beneficial to all students and their learning. How do you get to that deeper level of learning? So I was doing some consulting with an arts integrated school in the metro area, and the 4th grade teacher came to me very angry and said that the art teacher will not integrate lessons with him, and he has been trying to get the art teacher to integrate lessons, and why we're an arts integrated school, and this art teacher will not integrate lessons with me. And so I said, okay, well, what is it that you are wanting him to do? And so he brings out something that looked very much like this. It was a construction paper TP around straws, just very simple. And I said, oh, and the art teacher doesn't want to do that in his classroom. No, he doesn't. Well, being an art teacher, I would have told him, no, I'm not going to do that in my classroom either, for a variety of reasons. One, this is not an appropriate lesson. It trivializes the understanding of a particular culture, for one. It does not, it is a trivial understanding of a particular culture. Another reason, why would the art teacher take his time to do this in the classroom? How would it help with their arts learning? And so I asked the 4th grade teacher, what is it you want to teach with this? And he said, well, the Plains Indians responded to the particular geographic region by creating homes in which they could pack up and move. And I said, wait a minute, what did you just say? They created what? Homes. Okay, how about you go to the art teacher and say, could you create a lesson on what it means to be a home? And the art teacher said, absolutely. So it's about deeper learning where that content crosses, not the activity. Okay, not about the activity. It's about the transferable, deeper learning, the human understanding why we create art. So what about standards? This is usually the next question I get. But, I get it, that's great. Making a home is lovely. But I have got to meet these standards. How do I do that within the constraints of my particular curriculum? The next thing I usually hear is either, but my school wants us to do Common Core. And how on earth can we do Common Core and the arts? Actually, Common Core is very friendly to the arts. It seems antithetical, but Common Core is very friendly to the arts. So if you go out knowing how what you do aligns to the Common Core, it's just more ammunition for your kit. Okay? So here's a couple of ways. So the ELA, English Language Arts, we call it Reading, Writing, and Communicating in Colorado. Common Core calls it ELA, English Language Arts. It could also be English Language Acquisition, thank you. All my acronyms are rolling around in my head, but this stands for English Language Arts in the Common Core. So what has Common Core done that's different? it requires 50% informational text anymore. We used to do a lot of fiction reading in schools, and now Common Core says 50% of our reading needs to be informational texts. Okay, so how can we respond to that through the arts? It could be informational text about the arts. So process, throwing a pot. It could be about an artist. It could be the life of an artist, okay? That informational text piece. The next one, deep reading is a huge thing. Those of you who are teachers, can you explain what deep reading is to us? Yes, ma'am.
Reading using critical thinking,
Yep.
not just absorbing the text, but interacting with the text by writing questions and comments and making connections and the markups.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's also taking the messages and the ideas from the text and applying them to real life situations. For example, when we do Jekyll and Hyde, we also talk about the duality of humanity and the challenges that you might face, internal conflicts within yourself as well.
Right. So really understanding what you're reading and being able to bring in background and evidence in that reading. So not just surface reading, but truly deep reading. Now here's the cool thing about Common Core. A text, Common Core defines a text as all human-made content. So that could be an artistic representation. So a work of art is a text. A score of music is a text. A script, a play script, is a text. A dance that has been choreographed is a text. And you can deep read that for information just like you can the textbook. Okay? So deep reading. So ways to do that. How can you use that? Dramatic arts, of course, speaking and listening is a huge part of Common Core. Dramatic arts, all about speaking and listening, right? And understanding through interpreting what that person's doing. And the Common Core emphasizes academic language. Think of the academic language we use in arts all the time. Braille, anyone? Think of the academic language for arts, for music that we use. Okay, so let's go back to this deep reading. Let me show you what some links here. So one of these links, we're going to be talking about how to use deep reading through the arts. And there's one group called Artful Thinking, and it's Project Zero. I love this. Has anybody used Artful Thinking? Okay, good. Yeah. I love Artful Thinking. It's very practical and you can use it for any content area. And so we're going to do some of that today that you can take back with you. Let me get my cursor over here. All right. So Artful Thinking, if you basically take the thinking palette of reasoning, questioning, observing, comparing, finding complexity, exploring viewpoints, and then within that thinking palette, what are some routines you can do for deep reading or deep understanding of our now broadened idea of a text? Okay, so Artful Thinking has, I believe there are 18 different steps or processes that you could use with your students to read a text and really understand it, the deep reading. So they are over here, the processes, and you can click on them and go through them. They're really cool. The other thing that I'm going to show you is if you click on this right here, it's going to take you to one school's worksheets of how they use the different Artful Thinking routines. So I've just copied 2 of them here. And then I've put a third one on the back that is actually my favorite, and we're going to use all 3 of these today. Artful Thinking routines. But if you click on that, it will take you to, there are about 10 more of them. And they're already printed out for you here. And this is how Bates Middle School, which is an arts integrated school that got federal funding, uses the Artful Thinking routines in their particular school. So now we're going to go through an Artful Thinking routine. We're going to do what makes you say that. And let me get my cursor back over here. Okay, so we're going to look at this image. And with number 1, we're going to describe what is going on or what is happening in this picture. So just throw out your answers. You don't have to analyze it, just what is going on, what is happening in this picture. Yes, ma'am. Person is hiding. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
The text-to-text connection makes me think of the short story Yellow Wallpaper.
Fantastic. So she just said she's got a text-to-text connection. So that is when you compare an understanding from one text to another text. So she just compared this visual arts text to a literary text. and made a connection between the two. Deep thinking. What else? What do you see?
Someone looking through a curtain.
Okay, someone is looking through a curtain. What makes you say that? What makes you say someone's hiding?
Because they're behind.
Okay.
Just that line is peeking out.
Okay. All right.
Or maybe the person is visualizing this beautiful art piece.
Maybe she's visualizing it. Yeah. Terrific. Bob.
The other thing you see is the point of the creator or photographer that created an alignment to make the message, so there's actually 3 elements in there that are there.
Awesome. Tell us those 3 elements.
Well, the person who created,
Uh-huh.
the fact of the design, and the fact of the person behind it.
Excellent. Deep thinking, right, of this text. Okay. So we could go on to this a little bit longer. This is actually, if I click on him and take you to his website, this is by an artist whose name is Bryce Hudson. Let me get over here and click on it, and I'll take you to his website. He has a series of these, and it's called Holding Pattern. And it's a series of women all about in their late 20s. Get my cursor back over here. Where's the cursor? There it is, so I can raise this down. So it's a series of women in their late 20s, all behind these kind of images, and they're from all different ethnicities. Why do you think the holding pattern? Where does that come from? What do you think?
Airport traffic is the...
Airport traffic, okay. So what do these images have in common with airport traffic?
It says right there that it's the demands of society of people, and there's an expectation that you reach a certain age, and then you have your children, and you get married, and you are in that quote-unquote holding pattern until you die.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I love Bryce because he is an African-American man, and yet he has captured this understanding of these young women through these particular art pieces. Okay, so you just did deep reading of a text. Okay, so do you see how that could align with visual arts and language arts? Now, the next thing, what about math? Okay, so I'm getting it, right? Language arts, easy. Yep, okay. So easy with language arts. Math, even easier. So how can math align? So remember, I'm very research-based with the things that I do here. So what do the arts provide? So there was an argument going on in the arts education world here. I guess it's still going on, but there were a lot of people putting out not empirically researched studies saying the arts are going to improve your math scores, the arts are going to do these types of things. And then sometimes it didn't happen. Sometimes it did, but there were lots of reasons that it happened. It couldn't be pinpointed exactly to that particular art piece. And so a group of researchers said, okay, what are then the empirically researched benefits of art education? And what they came up with is it's the thinking that happens. It's the training the mind to think deeper. And then that then is applied to math. And that's where you get your benefits. It's not necessarily the activity that you're doing. It's the thinking that you're going through to get there, regardless of your activity. Whether it's the theater piece that you're producing or it's the dance that you're doing. It's the thinking. So it was called Studio Habits of the Mind, and they followed, in this case, specifically art teachers in an art studio. But it is transferable to the other arts contents. And it's these 8 things that are happening: developing craft, engaging and persisting, envisioning, observing, expressing, reflecting, stretch and explore. Love that one. And engage and persist. Those 2, my favorite studio habits. Because when else do you get to do that engage and persist piece through the arts? And then how does it align with math? Well, here are the mathematical processes with Common Core. So Common Core math is now about process. And that's why you have so much aggravation about having to explain their thinking, because we've not done that in the past. It's just been, what is your answer? Do you have something to say? Okay. Okay, good. Right? So math now is about process. So the way I always had this in my classroom is I would have the 2 posters, and I taught the kids to identify where they were in the studio thinking habits as they were creating. So then they could know, okay, I've got to engage and persist right now because I'm throwing this pot and the wall keeps collapsing. And I have got to engage and persist. I have got to identify regularly repeated patterns and continue to evaluate the fact that this wall is too thin on top and it's too thick at the bottom, and I'm identifying that pattern, which is mathematical thinking. And now in my artistic engaging and persisting, I've got to stretch and explore what's going to happen if I raise the bottom of that pot. Do you see how it goes back and forth? Okay, the magic is when kids can tell you what they're doing. That is the magic. And that is the transferable skill. Another thing I wanted to show you is so more artful mathematics and science. So this is Pixar in a box. Have you seen this? Okay, totally cool. Okay, it's like I could have 100 lifetimes to be able to understand all this. So let me show you Pixar in a box. Come on, cursor. Here we go. Okay, so Pixar in a box. Pixar has teamed up with Khan Academy. And they've got this thing called Pixar in a Box where it's behind the scene at how do artists at Pixar do their job. Okay, and so they have all these little short videos that take you through it. Now I'm going to play for you just a part of the introduction because they say it better than I do.
At Pixar, on any given day, we're working on various stages of many films.
But it all begins with an idea. For example, Toy Story could have started like this.
When kids leave the room, the toys come to life. See, I always knew that my toys did that.
Our films start in story. Along with the director and the writer, we figure out what happens using simple drawings.
It's kind of like a comic book.
Exactly. And while we're drawing, production designers and their teams start designing the world and the characters. While they're painting and drawing and sculpting, our storyboards go to editorial, where they string together all of the drawings that we've created.
We time them out, add music, dialogue, and sound effects.
He was the only one who knew what the heck was going on!
And as these shots go through each stage in production, we'll update this scene over and over again. And this is where the science and the math come in.
What's going on?
What's next? Pipeline. We're ready to start making the film you'll see in the theater, and this happens in a particular order. It's time for our technical artists to figure out how to create the movie in the computer.
I've been here for 9 years, and I still have no idea how you guys turn our drawings into the finished film.
To be honest, something stumps us on every movie.
Hey, Galen.
Hey.
You've been here since Toy Story. What's been hard on each film?
Well, on Toy Story, everything. Here, let me show you. On Toy Story, we were inventing the entire process from scratch. Monsters Incorporated, fur and clothing. On Cars, reflective metal surfaces. On every new film, there's a new technical challenge. On Inside Out, we had to deal with a character made of glowing particles, and it took lots of people to figure out just that one thing.
Whoa, what is she made of?
Her shape will be made of points and particles of light. She was tough. This is the 17th version.
And the characters have to move, so someone has to add controls to the model.
Like a puppet, right?
Yes, except instead of strings, our animators will use a computer program to move the characters in a digital world. Next in the pipeline, sets.
So for Cars 2, you built the entire city of London?
We needed a huge chunk of the city because Mater and McQueen speed through it, so we figured out how to grow buildings with enough variation for them to look real.
And we moved through that set with our virtual cameras. Next up, animation.
I do know what the animators do. They bring the characters to life.
You see how she's moving but her clothes and hair are missing? Adding and moving those elements is going to be someone else's job further down the pipeline. And by somebody else, I mean me, and about 20 other simulation technical artists. Where are you getting all these shirts? We have to build everything you see, including the textures and surfaces, which help make the world and characters believable. Next up, lighting.
Ironically, it's really dark in the lighting department. So when you start, there are no lights?
No. Any source of light is something we have to add into the scene.
In this shot alone, there are 230 lights.
Last stop, the render farm.
A film is really a series of images, or frames. There's 24 of them every second.
This is where we make the frames. Everything comes together here, all the art, math, and science. A single frame can take more than 24 hours to render, and that's just one frame, and that's assuming we don't run into any snags.
Wow. It's incredible seeing final shots. And now that I know how they're made, even cooler.
So that's the tour. The next step is to jump back into the box and choose a lesson. What do you want to try?
Well, this one I'm building robots using combinatorics. That looks pretty cool.
What about the one on sets and staging?
Yeah, or the one on animating The Incredibles.
Awesome. Always wanted to animate.
Pixar in a box.
Oh, that was
Pretty cool, huh? What I really love about that, besides the fact that it's just incredibly cool, is the science that's going on, the math that's going on. How many times have you heard a kid say, this math? I'm never going to use this, it's stupid, right? But look at the math that was going on in that. Yeah, what's the point, right? And so that's where arts integration comes in, because it can show you the point. Because as Dan pointed out, the assessment for arts integration is what you make. So how does that, what you're doing and what you're learning, what's the point? Well, you're going to need it when you put this book together. You're going to use it when you create that film that you're doing. Okay, so what is the point? And that's where the arts integration is the magic about arts integration. Okay, okay, let's take some playtime. So at your groups, try to find people who, you can stay at your tables if you want. You can move to find more like-minded groups, like if you've got, you want to work with elementary folks, or you want to work with nonprofit folks. So it's on the back of this page, we've got what the activity is. So within your team, you're going to decide on an arts content and another academic content to integrate. Work with your team to decide on a big idea or an essential question that crosses both content. And then here's where I was pretending to be from Philadelphia. Use might use. The standards concept that should be you might use. The standards concept connections or key generations from CD if you wish. Decide on what learning you will integrate and then write a quick sketch. What kind of activity you're going to do, how are you going to integrate it. So I've given you some areas of arts to consider: visual arts, music, theater, dance, digital media, creative writing. You know, there are other things you could do. And then some other academic areas to consider. What are some things, if you work together at your group, what is some integrated way you can integrate that content that would be useful for you? That's what I was going to do. Right, you have to follow the protocol. It is awkward. I mean, a sentence from each table kind of sums up your conversation. Who would like to start? Yeah, okay, we'll start here.
Well, we started with an idea of math, and we were kind of trying to get it tight about it, so we said it was going to be division. We actually went back on that. The sentence that we came up with: can we use the magical comic genre to express applied concepts in math? Okay. So originally we tied it down. We made the big idea sharing and the concepts in division. We then decided that was too tight. It wasn't going to be fun enough. And maybe if we had storyline characters and superpower, which was the sort of applied concept, that we should have our big idea be meaning and just make it. Can we use the magical genre to express applied concepts in math?
Very good. Okay, so magical concepts through mathematical process and thinking, and using a comic book for that. Great. This group?
So we talked about a lesson which I am teaching these days, and I shared that what I was planning to do this coming week. So we are doing ecosystem part of ecology, and I have an activity planned for them on designing a habitat.
Nice.
And I got some good ideas from them. My plan was to to give them choices that, after teaching them the main concept about, how the ecosystem functions, what are the essential components of an ecosystem. So I'll give them the choice of creating a habitat, like they may write a story or, through a painting, they can come up with their idea of a, well-balanced habitat. So they gave me another idea that maybe I can do, what was your thought? The sculpture thing? Yeah, so maybe they can come up with a sculpture where they will have to, keep the components, the essential components of a habitat, the balance, because the big idea is structure and function when we talk of ecosystem. So another idea was that I should ask them, okay, if you take out one of the components, and how you are going to, create the habitat, so that they know that they cannot miss any component. So
Fantastic.
Yeah, I got some good ideas from my
Great.
table.
Yeah, very useful, a very practical application
Yes.
for what you're doing here. Difficulties. Does any of you have a difficulty with the process, with what you're doing? Uh-huh.
Well, our difficulty that has been tripping us up recently has been we have the content side and not so much of the arts content side.
Yes.
So we have done a pretty good job recently incorporating visual art into our lessons, but we wanted to incorporate music, particularly some classical music that fits with the movement, such as romanticism and naturalism. But we don't
you don't
know enough about it.
Exactly.
So
it's going to be a continuing discussion of, I always forget that our choir teacher is a classically trained pianist. And so it's one of those, like, it's going to be trying to sound this room to be like, hey, what can you tell me on this?
Exactly.
We started the conversation like 3 times, but we never have that time to actually sit down and do it.
Right, so this is when you bring in your specialist teachers and when you bring in teaching artists. This is where your teaching artists come in and become your best friends, because they can bring that arts content in for you. Great. Yes, sir?
We did that. I don't think it was so much a problem, but a challenge. We took a workshop that I just recently developed or created, still developing on Shakespeare's King Lear. And we thought about giving it a digital media arts aspect.
Right.
And applying it to the social studies rather than simply the creative writing side.
Exactly.
And we brought this out, how can we bounce it into other potential.
Right. And I found some of the best happens in situations that doesn't seem natural, but that's when the best. So bringing in social studies is fantastic with that. Other 2 teams, what are your takeaways?
Well, I have a project where I teach theater and storytelling. And I have learned that when I have kids come up with the original stories, I have to give them some kind of theme, because I don't have a theme. They just go anywhere.
It's too much.
And it's usually a good and bad kind of thing. So the theme that I planned to use was the environment.
Perfect.
Being aware of the environment, and first discussing whatever they know or feel about the environment, and then teaching them storytelling, coming up with the protagonist, their conflict, obstacles, resolution, and all the time they're learning about solving some kind of environmental problem.
Right. So we've got science, we've got language arts, we've got sequencing, which is part of math. You've got all kinds of fantastic things in there. And back group.
We decided, we followed the exercise. We originally chose the question, what does it mean to be an effective communicator?
Excellent.
Thinking we would integrate visual arts and social studies. We came up with all these ideas and we realized we didn't respond to that question. So we changed the question to what makes communication effective? And we thought about taking the speech that I have a dream speech from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., having students listen to it and then create in groups collages using visual symbols of the ideas expressed, and students can compare the group collages and see what themes were continually repeated and picked up. The idea being is that resonance that makes communication effective. So many people pick up on the same symbols and pick up on the same ideas, and then you're having students replicate the same thinking process by adding on to those collages with things, symbols, of ideas and concepts they think Martin Luther King Jr. would have brought up should he be delivering that speech
but we had to change our essential question.
Right.
Because you guys are excited about collages.
Uh-huh.
And then we realized we didn't respond to your
And that's really great learning. It is okay to do that. It is okay to say, no, okay, what are we really talking about here?
Something you can do with that too, because I've done that, like what you're talking about, I've done in my class twice before. I always started off with having the kids listen to the speech and draw what they heard individually. So they all have like an 8.5 by 11, and then they find people and compare it, because then you start to see those shared cultural ideas as well in the artistic side of it.
And that's the magic of having us all in the same room.